Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into my official college football week number 3 reaction, where I go through all of the ranked matchups and talk about them for about a minute or so. So let's begin. Week 3, we knew there weren't going to be many good games. Let's get through it. You do have Kansas State. This people were saying this might have been the best game of the week. It turned out to not be very good. Kansas State beating Arizona. I think Arizona went up 7-0. Kansas State scores 31 unanswered. Arizona this year, it's been a real letdown. Kansas State, it's an impressive win at home. And certainly Kansas State, Avery Johnson, 110 rushing yards. They will be moving up probably. I mean, winning that game by 24 points, that's commanding considering they were only 7-point favorites. They'll probably be a top 10, maybe top 11 team, depending in terms of that. That's a big win for them. Moving on to the Saturday games, you did have Georgia win by 1 point, and they survived a scare. They did. Kentucky there at the end, they gave them a scare. But this is a situation, do we really overreact to it? I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really not going to matter. Georgia gets a bye week next week, and then they face Alabama, right? So we'll know how good Georgia is. You could argue they've already gotten the win over Clemson. They're still really good. It's just one of those early season aberration games. Kentucky, they're better than how they performed against South Carolina. We know that. And so I think in general, Kentucky, they fought at home. It was a 7:30 game. It was big. It was ABC, and they showed some serious fight. Georgia gets the win though. Carson Beck, not that good, only 160 passing yards. But I mean, if Kentucky wanted to pull off this upset, they really needed to be up by like 10 points at the end of the first half, and they just weren't. They couldn't score touchdowns. They had 4 field goals, and Georgia ends up winning this game and really leading throughout all of the fourth quarter. But it was close there. Kentucky trying to drive towards the end of the game with like 3 minutes left, but around midfield as well. But either way, Georgia wins that game. There's going to be an argument, should Texas move to number 1? Again, it's not going to matter in 2 weeks because if Georgia beats Bama, they're going to be number 1 guaranteed anyways. But you could argue maybe Texas. I mean, you're 24-point favorites. You win by 1 point. Certainly, you could say Texas should be the number 1 team. And you did have Texas beating UTSA 56-7. UTSA this year is not good, but that's still a solid win for Texas. 49-point victory when they were like 34-point favorites or whatever. Texas, we'll see what happens with Quinn Ewers, the injury. Arch Manning comes in, fills in for him extremely well. 223 yards and 4 touchdowns, along with a really long rushing touchdown. So Arch Manning looked really good, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I still think, Ewers, obviously, as long as he's healthy, he should start. He's got the veteran leadership. We know how good he looked in Michigan in a hostile environment. So it was a good win for Texas. They easily covered the spread. They have an argument to be the number 1 team in the country. We will see. Alabama beats Wisconsin. This was the big noon game, 42-10. Close early, but Alabama was just so much more talented. Jalen Milroe, 196 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 2 more rushing touchdowns as well. Jalen Milroe, top 5 right now in terms of the Heisman. There's no doubt about it. And Bama, that's an impressive win. Wisconsin's not a very good team. We know that, but still, for Bama to go on the road and really just annihilate them and trounce them, win that game by 32 points. They were sitting around 15, 16-point favorites. It is pretty impressive. You would expect Bama to not move off of that number 4 spot. They should stay there. You do have Ole Miss destroying Wake Forest. Really good defensive performance from Ole Miss. I feel like in years past, this Ole Miss would be a team that would allow like 23 points, like they'd win 40-23. But this Ole Miss team looks really good. And you could argue they should even move up. I don't think they will because Bama had such a nice win. But, they were sitting as, 22, 23-point favorites. They easily cover the spread. I didn't think they'd cover it. So they certainly proved me wrong. You do have Jackson Dart, almost 400 yards. Parrish Jr., 150 and 2 touchdowns, basically. This Ole Miss offense is running, and there's a lot of hype surrounding that program. People think they could win the national title. Ole Miss looks really good right now. Wake Forest, it was a very easy non-conference schedule. It was with Wake Forest and some of the other teams that they faced, an FCS team in Middle Tennessee State as well. But still, they've blown out 3 straight teams. They're 3-0 against the spread. They look like a powerhouse. We'll see how they do when the competition gets more stiff. But either way, they win that game. You do have Missouri beating Boston College. So Boston College ends up covering the 16-point spread. I do not think Missouri should be the number 16 team the number 6 team in the country. Even with Boston College being ranked going into this game and them winning it, Missouri winning it, to me, they're like maybe the 10th, 11th best team. It was, I guess, a solid win for Missouri. They had something. I mean, remember in the second quarter, Missouri had like 2nd and 59 due to a bunch of penalties, but Boston College, I never really thought they should have been ranked anyways. They're going to have an interesting game next week hosting Michigan State. But in this one, I mean, Missouri gets the win. They don't cover the spread. And really nothing crazy. Luther Burden goes for 117 and a touchdown. But other than that, it was kind of a tame second half. Missouri was in control. It wasn't anything crazy. Like, I think Boston College was up 14-3, and then Missouri scored like 20 unanswered points to take the lead and really hold on to it there. It was looking like Missouri might be able to cover that spread, but then Boston College scored a touchdown. You do have Tennessee scoring 65 points in the first half and getting the second half kickoff. So Tennessee started, I mean, I was watching this game in the first half, and it was like the perfect storm of the ultimate 100-point game. And obviously it didn't happen because they didn't try in the second half, and it's very hard to get a game like that. But I'm just saying, Kent State had 2 snaps go over their head because their center couldn't snap properly. Tennessee was getting the ball basically every time at midfield. We know with Tennessee's offense, it's a play every 10 seconds. It's like Tennessee is the one team that could score 100 points, but they only scored 6 total points in the second half. How do you score 65 points in the first half? 37 points in the first quarter, which is just so crazy to not receive the opening kickoff and score 37 points in the first quarter. I mean, listen, it's Kent State. They're the worst team in FBS for sure. I think Tennessee should be like a top 5, top 6 team right now. Oregon finally shows up against Oregon State. They have a huge second half, 27-0 in the second half. They win this game 49-14. Dylan Gabriel looked really good. Oregon easily covers that spread. I expected them to finally show up, and they did. Miami destroys Ball State after a lengthy weather delay, a lightning delay, I'm guessing there. They win 62-0. They easily cover that 36-point spread. Cam Ward, looking for those Heisman stats. He goes for 346 and 5 passing touchdowns, padding the Heisman stats there. Utah ends up beating Utah State. Utah State covers the spread there. Cam Rising not playing in that game. It was an okay win for Utah, nothing special. I'm surprised they allowed 21 points to Utah State. Oklahoma State destroys Tulsa on the road. Kind of a weird game, but Oklahoma State, nice start to their season. They're a top 15 team right now. They're 3-0. It is interesting that Alec Gordon continues to struggle, although their passing attack looks really good. 396, Alec Bowman, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. So a nice win for them. They cover that spread. I think the spread was only like 23. They win by 35. Oklahoma beats Tulane. This game was close in the fourth quarter. It was 24-19, but Oklahoma ends up winning by 15. A pretty solid win. Tulane's a decent team. Jackson Arnold wasn't great, but he did have a good rushing day. We will see Oklahoma against Tennessee and how well they'll do next week. That's going to be a very tough game for them, but right now they are undefeated. LSU beats South Carolina in the noon game. And wow, if you are South Carolina, what a disappointing loss this was. This was a game that you should have won. Seemed like they had it in control throughout most of it. And LSU, Brian Kelly, he needed that win. Holy, imagine LSU loses this game. They're 1-2. But South Carolina, if they would be 3-0, they'd probably be ranked. And people say the refs were really bad. I mean, it's just a game you got to win at home when you're up by what South Carolina was. It seemed like they were in control the full game, especially late in the second quarter, and they end up losing it. Their running back goes for 143, 2 touchdowns. Sanders, Nussmeier, he was okay. I mean, for playing, I mean, they were playing from behind. He only had 285 passing yards. You would think in a college game where you come back and you win 36-33, the QB would throw for like 400. That's just kind of weird. But there were some turnovers, things mixed in. LSU, they stay alive in terms of the playoff. I mean, imagine they lose this game, they go to 1-2. You still have a ridiculously tough SEC schedule. They'd probably be screwed in terms of that. Michigan beats Arkansas State. To be fair to Michigan, this was a laugher. I mean, they were up 28-3. Arkansas State scored 15 points really late in that game to try and make it look close, but Michigan with the quarterback situation, Davis Warren, 3 interceptions. It's really bad. And now Michigan is hosting USC next week. They do have a huge quarterback problem. They did not come close to covering this spread. They were around 22-point favorites. They win by 10. And it's just the offensive passing game. It is not good right now for Michigan. Notre Dame throttles Purdue. Throttles them 66-7. They easily win that game. Very impressive performance coming back. I mean, I thought Purdue, they'd be a lot. I mean, Purdue was coming off a bye too, and Notre Dame destroyed them. That's going to help them in terms of the analytics for sure, even though Notre Dame loses to, Northern Illinois last week. That's a very nice response. You're 10-point favorites. You win that game by 59 points. That's ridiculous. And then Nebraska beats Northern Illinois in a very boring game, 34-3. Northern Illinois had a really weird drive. It was a 10-minute drive where they got a field goal in the first quarter, But other than that, Nebraska kind of sleepwalks. They ended up not covering. It was like a 40-point spread. It's an FCS team, but that's just that. You do also have the football power index I'm going to be going to right here, taking a look and seeing how this updates. When it does load, you can see Texas is still sitting at number 1 right now. Wow, Georgia moves down 3 spots to number 5. Okay, but look at this. Well, actually, it's interesting. They're starting to spread out a little bit, the top 6 teams, because you've got Texas and Alabama neck and neck at 28 points. Ohio State at 26. They're at number 3 now. Tennessee now at number 4 because they've been blowing everyone out. Even though it's their bad teams, they're going to move up. Georgia moves down 3 spots, but if they beat Alabama, I'm sure they're going to move back up. You would expect. Ole Miss is still at number 6. You do have Notre Dame moving up 3 spots. It doesn't surprise me. I know people are going to say, well, there's no way Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Well, these are analytical rankings. They're not going to overreact to 1 week. And because Notre Dame just annihilated Purdue, it does make sense. Miami up to number 8. I think that's fair for them. Penn State down to number 9. I'm surprised they're not lower. Penn State did have a bye this week, I believe, and they almost lost to, well, I wouldn't say they almost lost to, but you win by a touchdown against Bowling Green. That's not great. Missouri down to number 10. Oregon back up to number 11. USC down 4 spots on a bye. That's pretty crazy. Louisville at number 13. They had a bye as well. There's a lot of teams that had a bye. Oklahoma at number 14. A&M up 4 spots because they beat Florida on the road, I think. They're at number 15. We know A&M's not the 15th best team. But also what helps A&M is Notre Dame winning, believe it or not, and blowing out Purdue, because A&M loses to Notre Dame, but now that loss looks better, I guess you can say. It's kind of like it's an analytical thing. Clemson down 2 spots. They had a bye. You did have Kansas State up 1 spot only for beating Arizona. You've got UCF. They're 3-0 now. They might be ranked. They're down 2 spots, but they're the number 18 team. Indiana, they could be ranked. They're 19th in terms of the analytics. They crushed UCLA as only 3-point favorites, and they've got Charlotte. So they're going to be 4-0. Indiana's going to be 4-0. They're going to beat Charlotte. Oklahoma State up 7 spots. Michigan down 4 spots because that was not a good performance against Arkansas State. LSU down 2 spots. Boston College, even with their loss, they move up a spot. Utah down 3 spots. Nebraska up to the number 25th team. Just looking at some of the big movers. Maryland, they're sitting at 2-1. They move up 6 spots. That loss to Michigan State was brutal for Maryland. Otherwise, they'd probably be ranked. Boise State, they're another team that had a bye. They're up 3 spots. Washington is down 8 spots. They lost the Apple Cup. Arkansas down 9 spots. Bad performance against UAB. Really bad performance. Iowa up 5 spots. Washington State up. Washington State sitting at 3-0 in an easy schedule, like a Mountain West schedule. That's interesting for them. They're up 11 spots. Kansas, they're down 3 spots. They're 1-2. They've had a bad start to their season. Virginia Tech, they're trending up after beating Old Dominion. You've got Kentucky sitting at 1-2, but they're up 16 spots because they almost beat Georgia. Florida State at 0-3. They're down 10 spots. They might finish 2-10 this year. It's going to be really bad for them. You look at their schedule. They're probably going to lose to California as well and possibly drop to 0-4. Minnesota up 13 spots. They shut out Nevada 27-0. Baylor is up significantly. They crushed Air Force. Memphis beat FSU. They're up 16 spots. UNLV beats Kansas. They're up 11 spots. Texas Tech throttles North Texas. They scored like 66 points. They're up 22 spots. Arizona down 18. North Carolina, really bad performance against an FCS team, down 15 spots. Fresno State up 20 spots. They played at 10 o'clock last night. They must have easily won their game. South Florida moves up significantly. That's going to help Alabama. Mississippi State loses to Toledo and gets blown out at home. A MAC school, they're down 26 spots. Oregon State gets crushed against Oregon in the rivalry game. They're down 26 spots. Toledo is up 23 spots. Toledo is above Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois had a bye week last week. They're still probably going to be ranked. Houston had a really good performance. Finally, they're up 15 spots. That's their first good performance of the year. You did have South Alabama. 87 points for South Alabama. They had a 5-minute running fourth quarter clock. Otherwise, they would have scored 100. They're up 21 spots. UCLA down 20 spots after losing to Indiana. And that's basically it. Wow, Purdue down 41 spots after getting throttled by Notre Dame. 42-0 at the end of the first half in that game. And that's pretty much it. Miami of Ohio, kind of a disappointing start. 0-2. They lost to Cincinnati in the rivalry game. But other than that, North Texas obviously getting crushed by Texas Tech. They're down. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Links to that's always in the description.